Ethan Harper had always been a creature of habit. At 32, he was the kind of guy who thrived on routine. Wake up at 6:45 a.m., brew the same medium roast coffee, scroll through emails on his laptop while the city outside his window buzzed to life. He worked as a freelance graphic designer, which meant long hours, hunched over his computer, and whatever cramped space he could afford. After his breakup with Sarah 6 months ago, he decided it was time for a fresh start. No more shared leases or lingering memories in every corner. He found a listing for a one-bedroom apartment in an old brick building on the edge of downtown. Affordable, quiet, and most importantly, all his. The move-in day was unremarkable. A couple of friends helped haul his boxes up the 3 flights of stairs, complaining about the narrow hallways and the faint, musty smell that seemed to cling to the walls. "This place has character," Ethan joked, wiping sweat from his brow. By evening, he was alone, surrounded by half-unpacked cardboard towers. He ordered pizza, cracked open a beer, and collapsed on the couch, staring at the blank TV screen. Everything felt normal, almost too normal, like the calm before a storm he didn't know was coming. It started with the storage room. Tucked at the end of the short hallway past the bathroom and his bedroom, it was a small, unassuming space, maybe 8 by 10 feet. The realtor had mentioned it offhand during the tour. Extra storage, great for seasonal stuff or whatever. Ethan hadn't given it much thought. On that first night, after finishing his pizza, he wandered down the hall to stash some empty boxes. He flipped on the light, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling, and blinked against the harsh glare. When his eyes reopened, something was off. The shelves along the left wall, which had been empty and dusty, now held a few scattered items. An old lamp, a stack of yellowed books, a toolbox. Ethan rubbed his eyes. Had he missed those during the walkthrough? He must have been tired from the move. Shrugging it off, he shoved the boxes inside and closed the door. But sleep didn't come easy that night. He tossed and turned, his mind replaying the oddity. The next morning, coffee in hand, he decided to check again. Opening the door, he blinked, and the shelves had shifted. They were no longer on the left wall, but on the right, and the items were gone, replaced by a bicycle wheel and some folded blankets. "What the?" Ethan muttered, stepping inside. He blinked again, involuntarily, and the ceiling seemed to drop an inch or two, the bulb now hanging lower, casting longer shadows. Heart pounding, he backed out and slammed the door. This had to be a trick of delight, or maybe he was still half asleep. He grabbed his phone and snapped a photo. The image showed the room exactly as it had been during the tour. Empty shelves on the left, high ceiling, no extras. Relieved, he laughed it off. "See, nothing weird, just need more coffee." But as the days turned into a week, the changes became impossible to ignore. Ethan started experimenting. He'd stand in the doorway, stare at the room, and force a long blink. Each time, something shifted. One blink, the walls changed color from beige to faded blue. Another, a crack appeared in the floor, snaking like a vein. Blink again, a small window materialized on the far wall, overlooking a non-existent alley that shimmered like heat haze. But only when he looked directly. If he glanced away or tried to record it, the room reverted to normal on camera. He even set up a tripod with his phone on video mode, narrating as he blinked. "Okay, watching now." Blink. The footage showed nothing, just Ethan standing there looking increasingly unhinged. He confided in his friend Mark over beers. "Dude, you sound like you're losing it," Mark said, chuckling. "Old building, maybe bad wiring or something messing with the lights. Or hey, carbon monoxide, get a detector." Ethan nodded, but he knew it wasn't that. The changes were too deliberate, too alive. The room wasn't just altering, it was evolving, like it was testing him, seeing how far it could push before he broke. Nights became sleepless ordeals. Even avoided the hallway after dark, but curiosity gnawed at him. One evening, after a particularly grueling deadline, he poured himself a whiskey and marched to the door. "All right, you freak show," he whispered, opening it. The room looked normal at first. Blink. The shelves multiplied, stacking floor to ceiling like a labyrinth. Blink again, a faint hum filled the air, like distant machinery. Blink again, the window grew larger, and through it he glimpsed not the city, but a vast, empty plain under a stormy sky. Terrified, he slammed the door and retreated to his living room. But the whiskey loosened his resolve, and soon he was back, notepad in hand, documenting each change. Blink 1, shells shift to center. Blink 2, ceiling lowers to 7 feet. Blink 3, window appears, view of ocean waves crashing. It was madness, but it was his madness. He started timing his blinks, trying to predict patterns. Sometimes the changes reversed, other times they built upon each other, turning the room into a surreal diorama. Weeks passed. Ethan's work suffered. He missed deadlines, his designs lacked their usual polish. Clients complained, but he couldn't focus. The room consumed him. He researched online, quantum observer effects, hallucinations from mold, even urban legends about liminal spaces that defy reality. Nothing fit. He considered moving out, but the lease was ironclad, and besides, a twisted part of him wanted to understand. What if this was a gift, a portal, or a curse? One rainy afternoon, he invited Sarah over, not to rekindle anything, but because he needed someone to witness it. They hadn't spoken much since the split, but she agreed, curiosity piqued by his frantic text. "Show me," she said, standing in the doorway. Ethan demonstrated. Blink, described the change. "See, the walls are rippling now, like water." She frowned, peering in. "Ethan, it looks the same. Are you okay? You seem stressed." She suggested therapy and left with a worried hug. Alone again, Ethan felt more isolated than ever. The room was his secret, his burden. As autumn faded into winter, the changes grew bolder. Blink, furniture appeared. A rickety chair, then a table with a flickering candle. Blink, whispers echoed, indistinct words in a language he didn't recognize. Blink, the air grew colder, frost forming on the new window. He tried sealing the door with tape, but it peeled away on its own. He slept with the lights on, but dreams invaded. He was inside the room, blinking endlessly as it morphed around him, trapping him in infinite variations. Then one fateful night, everything shifted. Not the room, but the pattern. Ethan had been up late sketching ideas for a client when he felt the pull. The hallway seemed longer, the door ajar. He approached cautiously. Inside, the room was stable. No shelves moving, no ceiling dropping, just the original empty space. Relieved, he stepped in, exhaling. "Finally," he murmured. But as he turned to leave, he blinked. The world inverted. When his eyes opened, he wasn't in the hallway anymore. He was still in the room, but now viewing it from the inside, looking out. The door was closed, and through the small gap under it, he saw feet. His feet? No, a figure stood outside, wearing his clothes, mimicking his posture. Ethan's heart hammered. He banged on the door, screaming, but no sound escaped. The figure outside, the other Ethan, turned, smiled faintly, and walked away down the hall. Panic surged. Ethan clawed at the walls, but they were solid now, unchanging. He blinked frantically. Nothing. The room held him captive, its transformation spent. Outside, he heard his own voice, the imposter's voice, answering a phone call, laughing with friends over speaker. Days blurred as Ethan starved in the dim light, watching shadows play across the floor. The imposter lived his life seamlessly, paying bills, meeting deadlines, even reconnecting with Sarah. One evening, the door creaked open. The imposter peered in, eyes gleaming with Ethan's face, but something alien behind them. "Comfortable?" it whispered. Ethan lunged, but the door slammed shut. He realized then the room hadn't been changing for him. It had been preparing him, molding a replacement, blink by blink until it could swap them. Now, trapped in the unchanging void, Ethan waits. He blinks, hoping for a shift, a glitch. But the room is patient. It knows that one day, perhaps, someone new will move in, and the cycle will begin again. Ethan's story faded into urban legend, whispered in the building's elevators. The apartment sat vacant for months, then rented to a young couple. They complained of a strange storage room. Nothing major, just shelves that seemed to move when you weren't looking. But they laughed it off. Until one night. The end? Or just another blink?